Heyo, and welcome back to the Ristar playthrough. Today we're going into Planet Scorch. And if you haven't guessed, this is a fire level. And it's a really intense fire level. If there's one level in Ristar that I say does get maybe a little bit overwhelming in terms of its visual style, I will say it is Planet Scorch. Because there's a lot of fire effects here, as you would expect. But there's also some lava effects which will be making themselves known later on in the planet. And it's this right here that I'm speaking about because, dear Christ, at 60 frames per second, that is very hard on the eyes. And it's just, I know it is a product of being a Mega Drive game. They haven't really got all that many colours to work with, and they probably couldn't really do something, more detailed, which would have taken the strain off it. But I guess it is what it is. I'm not knocking the game because of that, but, I do find that particular animation to be a little bit overwhelming on the eyes. But that being said, Planet Scorch, in its defence, it does still have some interesting, not quite puzzle kind of sections, but it does have some things that are a little bit outside the platforming norm. Like we saw earlier on, I had that section where I had to put the little statue under the cage to activate a button, which would let me go on through. And there will be some more things later where you need to pay that little bit more attention to the game than just knocking past this part in particular, what I'm talking about. Because this, I wouldn't really define it as a puzzle, because it's not really puzzling you in any way, it's more just a memory game. Because the first time you see this, it has the numbers, but they're going to go away. So now you need to start paying attention to what happens. And believe me, when you're very not smart like me, this can be a bit of a problem. And so yeah, I will fess up. A lot of resets did happen here, where I'm not that good when it comes to paying attention with this kind of thing. I am born and bred Sonic, and over time I've conditioned to Mega Man. I am the kind of player who knows that for most of the games I play, I can just dart my way through. So when it comes to a point where I have to forcefully slow myself down, it's like my brain doesn't know how to react. I just try and do my usual strategy of bum rush through it, and oh no, turns out that didn't work and I get burned by lava. But yeah, on to Planet Scorch round 2. I keep going to say act, and I know I will keep on doing that regardless, but they're called rounds. This one, the main mechanic that they want you to use here is to use Ristar's arms to lift yourself up and down on these, I don't know what they're called. They're kind of like vertical minecarts. I know there's a name for them, and I'm going to feel really fucking stupid when I think of what that is. But them things, they want you to use Ristar's arms to climb up and climb down. But I sort of, bluff my way through. There's a second way of doing everything, and I found it. So I will take the more being careful, quote-unquote careful, approach when we get to the next ones. But in the meantime, this one I will say is not quite as overwhelming as the first round of Planet Scorch. Yeah, see here, they don't expect you to do this, but it worked for me. But yeah, they haven't really forced, the really intense lava visual on you just yet. So, I think I prefer this particular act, although I do still appreciate the memory game section of Act 1. But yeah, as for Ristar itself, I don't have many sources for this, other than I think I read this on Sega Retro. But apparently the engine this is built on is the same one that was used for Sonic 1. I'm not sure, I think that was further adapted into Sonic 2 and then 3 and K, but I will say I don't really understand much of this stuff. I'm not the most technically minded of people, but I believe that would make sense, if there's similar people working on the game, like the same team of people working on the game, and it's got a similar kind of game design, not philosophy, because like I said in the first part, it's more of a chill kind of thing, but it's constructed in a similar kind of way. It does make sense that they would use assets from Sonic. But this boss here, I love this boss so much. This guy is called Adahan, and he just digs around, and this is where it gets really cool. Look at this! You know, we've got this falling section. This is something that I like this, you know, there's constant action on the screen. It doesn't really slow down. You know, as soon as you trigger that phase, it's like you got the constant falling motion as you go to hit him for the next time. And then, you know, it's just repeat the cycle. It's such a really fucking amazing boss. I love it. I'm trying to think of other bosses that are like this, because it seems like the kind of thing that it's probably done from time to time, but nothing's just jumping to head immediately. And this is great, by the way. Like, look at his base form there. Look at him, he's cute, he's adorable. I don't know why that makes me laugh as much as it does, but it's a charming little thing, you know? But yeah, all that I really think of from that boss, and it's not another boss fight, I just think of the character Excadrill from Pokemon. He's got the sort of drill thing on top of him, and he digs underground and he spins around and stuff. He's generally a cool Pokemon design, but as for actual bosses like that, none are coming to mind. But I suppose it is kind of a unique thing. You know, most bosses just have their static arena, or if not, then it takes the Sonic Advance 2 approach of you running alongside. So to have that vertical change, you know, it's something a little bit different, and I'm cool with that. But up next is Planet Sonata. And Planet Sonata is a level that I think this is probably the most memorable level for me from the whole game. And I'll say that that's not necessarily because of the level design, because the level design, it's a little bit slow compared to the other levels. Like, not offensively slow, but it's not the most consistently paced level, I should probably say. It's more the concept that is memorable to me, because essentially what you're doing here is your goal is to move these metronomes to each of the checkpoints in the level. And when we get the first one done, you'll see why this plays so well in my book. It's not just that though, we've also got these kind of cool platforming sections alongside it, which, yeah, it is slow, but it works with the level. And yeah, now I've got to wait for the fan, but there you see one of Ristar's little static animations, and I just like the way that he's sort of basically clicking his fingers in time with the music. It's little things like that were in the first part. I say that Ristar has a lot of character in this game. But here we go. This is the main gimmick of Planet Sonata Round 1, because each time you get a new one of these metronomes to another checkpoint, it adds a new layer to the song. And this is something that I think makes it quite distinct as a level. Not only because it is an interesting concept, but it's just working both the level trope and the music together well, because it's a music level, and essentially what you're doing here is you're constructing the song in the gameplay. And that kind of gameplay music synergy is the sort of thing that you don't see that often. I know there's not really that many opportunities that you get to make it work together as well as this. But on the rare occasions that you do, it's, you know, it's just such a cool thing. And yeah, one little trick that I've sort of developed over time is sometimes you need to clear the path ahead just so that you can carry this thing along without there being enemies getting in the way. Because naturally when you're carrying the metronome, you're a lot more vulnerable than when you're just walking along. So, you know, if you just get the irritating enemies out of the way first, then you can get it along safely and no one has to get hurt, which it's better for everyone involved that way. Now, one word that I used to describe the impression Ristar gives me is in part 1 is it leaves a certain feel to me, and that's actually quite appropriate because from a bit of research I did a while back, I found that Ristar's original design, both in terms of his character and the game, originally that was going to be called Phil. I will say, original looking Ristar, back when he was known as Phil, was a terrifying design. Like, seriously, imagine how Ristar is now, but his whole head was sort of pushed back, like he had two ears, sort of like a rabbit, which was part of the influence for his design. And so that kind of tells you they were originally going to try and create this particular feeling with the game. I'm glad they refined the character design. That's another thing about the character design. His shoes were basically Sonic shoes in the Phil design as well, which tells you more about the design ideas they had for his character. This is a cool boss as well. I say that about a lot of the bosses, but this little mini boss here it's another thing that uses the music in time, because they're all ducking in time with the beat, and once you clock onto that and you start realising that's what's happening, it makes the boss that much more immersive. But with that, we've taken down round 1 of Planet Sonata. And round 2 actually has quite a different aesthetic entirely. Because, again, that's another thing like I brought up with Planet Undertow, but the rounds in this game are very distinct from one another. This next one's called Dance Dance. And yeah, you can see we've got a lot more saturation going on here. Now, instead of just having the metronome gimmick to tie in with the music, now we're on musical instrument looking platforms, and that's more of a conventional music level kind of thing. Granted, music levels, they don't come up as often as other tropes in platformers or video games in general, I guess, because sometimes you do see these tropes show up in other games as well, but all I can think of in terms of music levels from other games off the top of my head is Music Plant from Sonic Advance 2. If we're reaching outside the platformers, there's also Music Park or Melody Motorway from Mario Kart 8. Well, originated in Mario Kart 7, but I remember the version from Mario Kart 8 more. Just because Mario Kart 8's a much better game, but you know. Now, if I'm going back to the early designs, now that we've got the boss out of the way, I have a quote here from Akira Nishino, who I believe was the project director. I know he was definitely quite involved with it, but this quote is, "Human babies are naturally curious, and we wanted Ristar, as a child himself, to be the same. So we came up with the idea that he needed to have stretchable arms that would enable him to reach out and touch everything in his environment." So that's where they came up with the idea of having the stretchy arms mechanic, and why they wanted Ristar to be more of a hands-on kind of character. Because Ristar is the kind of character who, when he attacks, when he does pretty much any sort of platforming, he gets very much up close and personal, and, you know, he's very, I guess, touchy-feely in a way, which it makes sense that he was inspired by a curious child. You know, I sort of think more of, like, because I am a pet kind of person, I think more of how dogs like to have a sniff at everything. I'm not saying Ristar's a dog, but when I have that kind of personality described to me, I think more of a dog than a child. But, you know, it goes either way. I can see the inspiration for both there. But this boss here is one that can be a little bit tricky, because there's a lot of stuff going on here, that all these things that are flying towards you that you've got to dodge, and on top of that you've got a super psychedelic warpy background there that, you know, you don't want to let it get too complicated. You don't want to you know, miss any things flying towards you, because that can be pretty lethal if you do. You only get 4 hits after all, and while for the sake of the playthrough I've done this in a way that I don't take damage on screen, because I don't want to lose and then waste time in the playthrough. But if you let this guy hit you too much, it adds up and he can knock you down pretty easily, so you want to watch yourself. Well, we got a little bit more time left. I want to sort of finish off the information I have in terms of Ristar's conception, because the other information that I managed to find from doing a bit of research on Ristar is Ristar was not the original name they had for this character. Obviously I've already mentioned Phil, but there are other versions of his game out there, betas and whatnot, where he was referred to as Dexstar, DEX Star, like that. And there's also one where he was referred to as Volt the Voltage, which might sort of explain like the little thunderbolt designs on his shoes. I think that ended up being a more subtle motif they would go with in the final game that we see here. Like, we don't really see much of Ristar in terms of electric attacks or anything. But I guess with the way his character moves around, it could be like a Pulseman kind of thing they had in mind, where he would sort of zap as he did a Volt Tackle thing. That could have worked with his character, but ultimately, with the powers he has with the climb and the grabby hands, he doesn't really need any extra powers. But ladies and gentlemen, that's Auric out the way, the boss of Planet Sonata, and I will see you next time for the finale of the Ristar playthrough. Bye bye for now.